You are about to survive a royal road trip across burning desert, camel breath, dust storms, and endless awkward diplomacy, just to see whether one famous king is actually worth the hype. Because tonight, that is your vacation plan, not a quick visit either. A months-long caravan crawl through heat so aggressive it feels personal, all because people will not stop talking about one man in Jerusalem. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the Queen of Sheba, the woman who heard maddening reports about a king so wise that apparently the entire trade network developed a crush on him. We're going to step into a kingdom that smells like frankincense, sun-baked stone, hot wool, and money. Then follow a queen rich enough to travel in gold and stubborn enough to cross half the world just to test a stranger. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Sheba. The good news, you are fabulously wealthy. The bad news, wealth in the ancient world still comes with sweat, grit, and a camel, making a noise outside that sounds like an old cupboard being dragged downstairs. Morning arrives hot and bright, with absolutely none of the softness modern people expect from sunrise. The light barges in. It hits the walls, the floors, your face, and every polished metal surface until the whole place feels like it is trying to roast you and impress you at the same time. The air already carries incense, not a gentle hint either. It is thick with frankincense and myrrh, sweet and resinous, the kind of smell that clings to your hair, your clothes, and probably your soul. Somewhere nearby, servants are opening storage jars packed with spices worth a small fortune, and the room smells like a luxury shop built beside a stable. Because that is Sheba for you. Glamour in one hand, livestock in the other. You sit up, bracelets cool against your skin for exactly 3 seconds before the heat claims them too. Gold on the wrists, rings at the fingers, fine cloth draped over your shoulders. Very elegant, until you remember there is dust on everything. The floor, the cushions, the ledge, the folded fabrics, the fruit bowl, your ankles, your entire existence. Dust is the one servant in Sheba that never takes a day off. Outside, the city is already groaning into motion. Caravan bells clink. Men shout. Donkeys complain with the emotional intensity of unpaid interns. Camels kneel and rise like sulky furniture. Porters stagger beneath sacks of spice, bundles of resin, carved boxes, skins of oil, ivory, ebony, and enough luxury goods to make any customs officer burst into tears. The smell outside is incredible for about 6 seconds. Then the animal yard hits you, then the sweating laborers, then the leather water skins warming in the sun. Then somebody somewhere empties something into a gutter, and now your royal morning includes a sharp note of ancient plumbing failure. Still, this is power. This is trade. This is what it feels like to sit at the crossroads of wealth so fragrant and expensive that whole caravans limp across deserts just to get a whiff of your inventory. And then there are the visitors. They keep arriving sunburned, dusty, overconfident, and very sure they have news worth your attention. Traders from the north, envoys with tired eyes, men whose lips are peeling from the journey, but who somehow still find the energy to say the same name over and over again. Solomon. Again with Solomon. You hear it while servants pour water over hands into bronze basins. You hear it while scribes crouch with tablets and ink. You hear it while spices are weighed, tribute is counted, and someone in the courtyard argues about the price of timber like his life depends on it. Solomon this, Solomon that, Solomon answered. Solomon built, Solomon judged, Solomon dazzled, Solomon knows things. At first, you assume this is ordinary caravan exaggeration. Ancient people loved a dramatic review. Give a merchant one decent meal and a shiny ceiling, and suddenly he's writing a 5-star testimonial with his whole personality. But the reports keep coming. One man swears the king can answer any hard question placed before him. Another insists his court runs like a machine, only with more gold and better singing. Another goes on about cedar halls, servants in perfect order, officials seated just so, food laid out in absurd abundance, and a temple that leaves people standing there with their mouths open like confused fish. And now you're annoyed, not because the stories are impossible, because everyone telling them has the same tone. That maddening tone people get when they've discovered one restaurant, one guru, one productivity app, and they now need the whole world to hear about it. You try to continue ruling your kingdom. There are accounts to inspect, caravans to schedule, agreements to maintain, storage rooms to check before some fool leaves costly resin where moisture can ruin it. There are guards to assign, petitions to hear, shipments to secure, and enough administrative nonsense to fill 10 lifetimes. But still, Solomon. The name hangs in the air with the incense. It drifts through corridors lined with woven textiles and polished wood. It follows you past jars sealed with clay and storerooms stacked with treasure. It arrives at your table with the figs and bread. It lurks in formal greetings. It pops up in trade talk. It sits there like a grain of sand under a jeweled sandal. By midday, the heat outside is savage. Stone walls throw it back at you. The courtyards shimmer. Servants move carefully, carrying water, cloth, trays, messages, and expressions that say they are trying very hard not to pass out in front of royalty. In the shade, officials bring more reports, more caravans from the north, more gossip from Jerusalem, more talk of a king whose wisdom is so famous that apparently it has become its own export product. You can almost hear your patience creak. Fine. Let's say this man is wise. Let's say he really does answer difficult questions without blinking. Let's say his court is magnificent, his judgment sharp, his God honored, his palace dazzling, his table overflowing, and his reputation not inflated by exhausted men who've spent too long on a camel. That still leaves one problem. You do not know, and not knowing starts to itch. Because you are not some idle listener lounging in perfume while men bring stories for entertainment. You are a queen. You live in a world built by roads, risk, and proof. Cargo must arrive. Deals must hold. Wells must be where people said they were. Distances must be survived. Claims must be tested. So the thought enters quietly at first, almost ridiculous in its nerve. Go see for yourself, which sounds glamorous until you picture the actual trip. Months on the road. Months. Not a breezy royal excursion with a shaded carriage and chilled drinks. This is a grinding parade of heat, flies, grit, sore bones, leaking water skins, fussy guards, argumentative handlers, and camels breathing directly into your personal space like they pay taxes there. The road north is long and mean. It offers rocks, thirst, wind, and the kind of sun that cooks your thoughts before noon. At night, the cold can bite. By day, the sand finds your teeth. Your clothes trap dust. Your tents smell like wool, smoke, and everybody's bad decisions. And yet the idea refuses to leave. You can already see the caravan forming. Chests sealed shut, spices packed tight, gold wrapped and loaded, servants rushing, animals grumbling, guards checking straps, scribes counting everything twice, because if one box vanishes, everyone will suddenly become extremely spiritual about it. All this just to test a king. And somehow, against all common sense, that sounds exactly like something a queen would do. The smell changes before anything else. One breath ago, you had palace shade, cooling stone, and dawn creeping over Sheba. Now the air turns thick and expensive. Resin, spice, sun-baked dust, camel, a lot of camel. It rolls over you in layers like someone emptied a luxury perfume counter into the back of a livestock wagon and called it civilization. Before you ever meet Solomon, you have to wake up where she woke up, already rich, already watched, already responsible for everything. So the morning comes hard over Sheba, not gently, not romantically. The sun climbs like it has a personal grudge against roofs, courtyards, and human skin. Light slams off pale walls. Bronze fittings glare. Every stone in the palace starts warming up for a long day of burning your feet through sandals that were never as sturdy as the sandal merchant promised. You wake in a kingdom that smells amazing from a distance and appalling up close. That is the first thing your whole body learns. Wealth here travels on legs. It groans. It spits. It has fleas. It kneels badly and rises worse. The riches of Sheba do not float in on clean little boats with polite invoices. They arrive tied to saddles, wrapped in hide, stacked in baskets, sealed in jars, and dragged over heat-cracked earth by animals that behave like deeply resentful co-workers. And still, what riches! Open one storage room, and the smell nearly knocks you backward. Frankincense piled in pale golden tears, myrrh in dark sticky lumps, cinnamon bark bundled tight, cassia, balsam, oils, gums, dried herbs, rare woods, dyed cloth, ivory, gold dust, hammered ingots, carved boxes, jars of ointment worth more than most people will earn in years. The air is so dense with sweetness, you can taste it on the back of your throat. Stay there too long, and your head starts to swim. Now step outside. Immediately you are slapped in the face by animal breath, hot dung, sweating men, leather straps, and a drain that has made peace with failure. This is the other half of empire. Not the polished bowl at a banquet, the warehouse in midsummer, the alley behind the warehouse in midsummer, the yard where 30 camels are digesting with biblical intensity. You grow up in both worlds at once now. You do too now. Lucky you. Sheba sits where the roads matter. That means everything passes through, or wants to. Caravans from inland, traders from across the sea, men with rings in their beards and opinions about tariffs, sailors who smell like salt, fish and old rope, desert chiefs bringing tribute with one hand and a list of complaints with the other, scribes carrying account tablets, and the expression of people who have discovered once again that numbers are rude. Nothing in this kingdom stays simple. A sack of resin is never just a sack of resin. It is weighed, sealed, taxed, guarded, inventoried, argued over, loaded, unloaded, blessed, promised, delayed, and blamed on somebody else when it goes missing. A chest of gold means guards. Guards mean rations. Rations mean grain shipments. Grain shipments mean storage. Storage means rats. Rats mean cats. Cats mean cat-related chaos. This, too, is government. By the time the queen is old enough to understand what the grown men are muttering over, she already knows the kingdom runs on scent, heat, and paperwork. Well, not paperwork exactly. Clay tablets, wax boards, scratched records, tallies, seals pressed by hand, strings tied around goods and stamped shut. Somebody counting jars in a room that smells like tree sap, lamp smoke, and despair. Somebody else recounting them because the first count was obviously wrong. Ancient administration is like trying to run a luxury department store out of a barn during a dust storm. And she is born straight into the middle of it. You can feel the palace around her, not soft in the modern sense. Rich, yes, but rich in the old way. Carved wood, inlaid furniture, heavy fabrics that trap heat magnificently, cushions stuffed with wool and hope, floors cool at dawn, scorching by afternoon, bronze mirrors that flatter no one, perfumed oil stored in tiny precious containers, while the corridor outside smells like sandals, servants, and somebody's lunch turning tragic in the heat. Servants move constantly. Nobody glides. Gliding is for paintings and liars. Real palace life is shuffling feet, full water jars knocking against thighs, trays balanced one-handed, messages repeated breathlessly from one courtyard to another, and people sweating through linen while trying to look composed. Somewhere, a cook is yelling because the grain delivery is late. Somewhere, a stable boy is learning that horses kick harder when you deserve it. Somewhere, an old nurse is clucking over a child with dust on her face and gold on her wrists. That child is watched from the beginning. Not because she is fragile, because she matters. A royal child in Sheba is not allowed to simply exist like a normal, grubby little person who eats dates and falls asleep in corners. Every gesture gets noticed. Every friendship gets catalogued. Every tutor, guard, cousin, steward, and attendant is measuring the weather around her. Who bows? Who lingers? Who reports back to whom? It is a palace, which means it is also a beehive with jewelry. She learns quickly. She learns what incense is worth before she learns what a joke costs. She learns that the scent rising from temple burners and royal stores is not only beautiful, it is income, it is diplomacy, it is leverage packed into resin. A handful of tears from a frankincense tree can buy loyalty, smooth negotiations, and make a foreign envoy suddenly remember his manners. It can also spoil if stored badly. Welcome to queenship. The trees themselves do not grow in comfort. You know that, because nobody in this land gets rich by strolling through meadows. The resin comes from scarred bark in harsh country, from trees that cling to rock and dry wind with a kind of stubbornness you almost respect. Men cut them carefully. The sap bleeds out slow, then hardens into fragrant drops. Then somebody has to gather it, sort it, bag it, load it, move it, guard it, and pray nobody along the route develops sticky fingers and a flexible conscience. From tree wound to royal treasury, every sweet smell drags a trail of labor behind it. The queen grows up breathing that truth. In the market, it becomes a full assault. You walk through with her, and there is no such thing as a discrete sensory experience. Vendors shout over one another until your skull vibrates. Donkeys object to everything. Goats insert themselves into trade negotiations with the confidence of creatures who have never once doubted their own importance. Fish laid out on mats are already developing ideas. Flies have convened. Copper pans flash in the sun like little acts of aggression. Spices spill color everywhere. Red powders, yellow roots, dark bark, green herbs drying on cloths, pyramids of dates, oil jars lined in rows, Fresh bread if you arrive early enough. Tough bread if you arrive late. Tougher bread if the baker dislikes your face, which today he might. The smell swings wildly from glorious to criminal within 3 steps. And through all of it come the caravan men. You hear them before you see them. Bells, grunts, creaking loads, curses. The wet, offended gargle cough of camels who feel the world has consistently failed them. Then they round the corner in a swaying line, long-lashed and foul-tempered, burdened with half the known world, and deeply uninterested in your aesthetic preferences. A camel at rest looks smug. A camel unloading looks like a folding cabinet full of grievances. Their handlers are no better. Sun-blackened skin, cracked lips, cloth wound around the head, eyes narrowed against glare and nonsense. They smell of wool, leather, old smoke, unwashed arms, and distances you cannot imagine yet. They bring gossip from ports, border reports from the interior, prices from cities you've never seen, and 27 complaints before breakfast. The Queen learns to listen. That matters more than speaking beautifully. Anybody can sit in a courtyard smelling expensive and nodding like a decorative jar. Ruling this place means hearing the trader who swears bandits hit the northern route, the harbour official who swears the ships were delayed by wind, the tax collector who swears the numbers are accurate, and the steward who swears half the warehouse staff are thieves. Everyone swears. Very little improves without supervision, so she learns the habit of questions. How many sacks left the port? Why did only 27 arrive? Why is the seal broken? Why is this account tablet damp? Who signed for these jars? Why does this camel appear to be chewing on a diplomatic gift? That last one happens more often than anyone would like. A kingdom of trade is a kingdom of constant, almost disasters. One broken axle and a shipment sits in the sun too long. One cracked jar and a whole storeroom reeks of oil for weeks. One lazy guard and goods disappear into the night. One ambitious official starts shaving off a percentage here and there. And by year's end, someone notices the treasury has developed a mysterious limp. And everybody wants a piece of Sheba. Of course they do. The place glitters. It smokes sweetly from shrines and palaces. It sends out caravans heavy with things other lands crave. Gold catches light on necks and wrists. Fine cloth moves through the streets. Foreign accents crowd the market. Rich places are catnip for opportunists. Some arrive smiling. Those are often the most exhausting ones. Envoys come with polished gifts and polished lies. Traders arrive praising the Queen's wisdom before they've even untied their sandals. Sea captains swear their cargo is modest while standing beside enough luxury goods to redecorate a dynasty. Chieftains from the uplands bow with perfect courtesy and then start negotiating as if manners were a weapon, which, to be fair, they are. You sit in audience halls and feel the performance of it all. The room smells like cedar chests, warmed resin, lamp oil, and human nerves. Fans move the hot air without improving it much. Gold gleams from bowls and bracelets. Servants stand ready with drinks sweetened enough to hide the taste of stored water. Petitioners wait in a line of linen, perfume, dust, and ambition. At the center of all that sits the Queen, not lounging, never lounging for long. A crown is heavy in every century, but ancient crowns come with extra problems. The metal is real, the air is hot, your back hurts, your ears are full of requests. People think being queen means reclining attractively while music happens nearby. In reality, It is closer to managing a luxury shipping corporation with no refrigeration, no antibiotics, and every neighboring ruler trying to be charming at you. By noon, your neck wants to file a complaint. She learns to hold her face still while her brain does 10 things at once. A shipment from the coast, repairs to a cistern, a dispute between merchants, a priest requesting incense allocation, a border rider with word of raiders, a steward quietly admitting the western storeroom has termites. Fantastic. Of course it does. Even prosperity has maintenance costs, especially prosperity. The palace stores are a miracle and a headache. Walk through them, and you feel both at once. Shelves lined with jars sealed in pitch, crates of folded cloth wrapped against dust, baskets of gums and spices, chests of worked metal, stacked amphorae, ropes, weights, scales, seals. Everywhere, the careful arrangement of a kingdom trying very hard not to misplace its own magnificence. And underneath it, the smell. Resin and cedar, spice and clay, oil and old straw, mouse droppings in a corner, damp wool in another, a cracked jar somebody hoped nobody would notice, a dead lizard by the threshold, a warehouse cat staring at you like you are the intruder here, which, in fairness, you are. This is where the Queen's wealth lives before it becomes spectacle, not on her wrists, on shelves, not in songs, in inventory. That is what makes her formidable. She is not dazzled by riches because she was raised among the machinery of them. She knows how much work it takes to turn tree sap into tribute and gold into diplomacy. She has smelled the caravan yard after rain. She has seen laborers unloading freight with rope burns across their palms and salt-crusted white on their tunics. She knows luxury is usually one room away from a man cursing over a broken crate. Outside the palace, the city never stops negotiating with heat. By afternoon, the air above the streets shimmers. Dogs flatten themselves into strips of misery under whatever shade exists. Water sellers do brisk business and suspicious math. Children race through alleys barefoot and indestructible. Women carry baskets on heads and babies on hips with the sort of balance that makes you question your own species. Metal workers hammer away in furnaces hot enough to make the sun seem repetitive. The Queen sees all of it because she has to. A ruler in a trade kingdom cannot pretend the city is only the clean courtyard parts. She has to know where water runs low, where thieves gather, which guild leader has become insufferable, which official is skimming, which road needs repair before the next caravan season, and which local notable suddenly has enough money to become interesting in the worst possible way. It is administration with sand in its teeth. At dusk, the place changes costume. Now the heat loosens a little. Fires are lit. The smell of cooking rises over the streets. Lentils, onions, flatbread, meat for the lucky, smoke for everyone. Incense burns in shrines. Musicians pick up rhythms in courtyards. Merchants still haggle because apparently some men will bargain through the collapse of civilization. Lamps blink alive one by one, and gold starts looking softer, kinder, almost innocent. Do not be fooled. Night brings its own list. Guards posted, gates checked, animals watered, accounts reviewed, messages sent. One servant dismissed for gossip, another praised for competence. 3 more discovered asleep where they should not be asleep. Somewhere in the distance, a camel moans with the wounded dignity of an uncle forced to help someone move house. The Queen is still working. You can see her in the lamplight with tablets and reports, listening as a scribe reads totals aloud. Imports, exports, temple allocations, royal stores, harbour duties, gift inventories, losses to spoilage, losses to theft, losses to miscellaneous transport complications, which is a wonderfully elegant phrase covering everything from axle failure to armed idiots. She asks for the numbers again, not because she missed them, because someone else did. This is what makes people respect her and fear her in equal measure. She cannot be snowed by perfume. She was raised inside the perfume business. She can tell when a merchant flatters because his weights are false. She can tell when an official speaks too smoothly because smoothness often means a missing jar, a missing sack, or a missing conscience. She has heard enough excuses to build a paved road to nowhere. And all of that starts young, long before the journey north, long before Solomon's name irritates the entire court by refusing to stop appearing in conversation, long before riddles and tribute and royal visits. She is formed here, in heat and fragrance and logistics, in scarcity too, because rich kingdoms still know fear. A season goes wrong, wells run low, a route closes, raiders strike, ships fail to arrive. Suddenly, all that lovely incense does not matter as much as grain. Suddenly, gold looks decorative beside a full cistern. Suddenly, a queen is not managing abundance, but rationing it, and every decision bruises someone. That will teach you very quickly what matters. She learns to keep stores. She learns to read faces. She learns that praise is cheap, transport is not, and everyone loves a generous ruler until taxes are due. She learns that a court can sparkle while the road to the port collapses. She learns that one missing convoy can sour 10 diplomatic relationships by supper. So yes, her world is luxurious. It is also one long exercise in not dropping the tray. You feel that in the mornings most of all. Before the musicians, before the formal audience, before the gold catches flame in the sun. The palace is awake with maintenance. Sweepers clearing yesterday's dust, so today's dust can replace it. Bakers kneading dough with forearms like ship ropes. Scribes trimming reeds. Attendants oiling hinges, folding cloth, carrying water, muttering under their breath. Officials arriving early to look diligent and leaving late to be seen doing it. This is the air she breathes. Resin, yes, always resin, but also wax, sweat, dung, hot stone, wool, lamp smoke, donkey, cedar, stale beer, drying figs, and occasionally the sharp medicinal sting of somebody trying to fix an infection with optimism and herbs. Ancient luxury still has very limited plumbing, and that matters because it makes her harder to impress. By the time tales begin filtering in from the north about another king, another court, another glittering center of power, she is not some sheltered woman blinking at the world from behind a curtain. She knows wealth. She inventories it. She taxes it. She stores it. She has probably smelled it leaking from a cracked jar in summer and had to decide who pays for the loss. So when grandeur is reported, she does not swoon. She calculates. How much cedar did that require? How many workers? What route brought the gold? Who fed the animals hauling the stone? How do they keep officials from skimming? Can the king actually judge? Or is he just sitting attractively near expensive furniture while everybody applauds? These are queenly questions. Also, excellent questions. Because where she comes from, reputation means very little if your warehouse roof caves in during monsoon season. You end the day back above the city, where evening wind finally moves across the roofs and courtyards. Below you, Sheba glows in the last light. Storehouses full, markets winding down, pens noisy with animals, incense smoke lifting in pale ribbons, bronze catching red sun, guards at the gates, servants still carrying one last load before dark. Somewhere, a merchant is absolutely still arguing. And at the center of it all is a woman shaped by abundance that never arrived neatly. A queen born into perfume, dust, and trade winds. A ruler who knows that sweet-smelling wealth usually comes wrapped in hide, tied with rough cord, and followed by 3 pages of complaints. A woman who can walk through a storeroom of frankincense and think not just of beauty, but of roots, guards, weather, theft, tribute, and timing. That kind of person does not cross a desert on a whim. So when the rumors start arriving in earnest, riding in with sunburned traders and dramatic men who have seen Jerusalem with their own very tired eyes, she is ready to listen, not believe. Listen. The smell changes before the messenger even reaches the gate. Not the good smell. Not frankincense, myrrh, warm bread, cedar oil, or the expensive perfumes that float through palace halls like they own the place. This is road smell. Camel hide, old sweat, sun-cooked wool, leather straps, and the sharp, miserable tang of men who have been eating dried dates for too long and have not had a proper wash in weeks. A caravan has come in. You hear it first as a groaning confusion beyond the wall. Bells clinking from neck harnesses, handlers shouting, a donkey expressing opinions nobody asked for, sand-crusted wheels complaining over stone. By the time the gates open and the line starts shuffling through, the whole entrance to the city looks like travel itself has staggered in and needs to sit down. And with it, news, always news. The merchants come from the north with their lips cracked and their faces peeled by sun, looking as though the desert has personally insulted them. Their cloaks are dusty, clear to the hem. Their beards hold grit. One man removes his head covering and releases enough dirt to plant barley in. Another is carrying a bundle of dyed cloth on one shoulder and the expression of someone who has rehearsed his dramatic story for 300 miles. You already know the type. No caravan arrives quietly, not if it can help it. Men who have crossed wilderness do not simply say, yes, we had a normal journey, weather was moderate, trade margins acceptable. Absolutely not. They arrive like survivors of an apocalypse caused by poor road maintenance. Every mile becomes 10. Every inconvenience becomes legend. Every border guard becomes a demon in sandals. But this time, the stories stick. You are in the audience hall when the first serious report reaches the Queen. Not the casual market gossip, not the usual, a king in the north has built a hall so beautiful your own mother would leave you for it. Real trade intelligence. The kind that comes wrapped in account tablets, tax assessments, and the sort of details only merchants remember because money was involved. A captain of caravans bows, drinks water like a man trying to refill his soul, and starts talking about Jerusalem. He talks about a king named Solomon, not in passing either, not as one ruler among many. He says the name with that irritating little pause people use when they are about to become extremely enthusiastic in your presence. You can practically feel the Queen go still on her seat. Courtiers notice, scribes notice, even a servant standing by the pillar with a fly whisk notices, because this man has the energy of someone about to say something outrageous with complete sincerity. The captain wipes his mouth and goes on. The roads into the hill country are crowded, he says. Traders from Tyre, men from Egypt, envoys from smaller kingdoms, trying not to look impressed and failing. There is cedar from Lebanon, There is carved ivory. There are shields that flash in the sun. There are building works so grand they make ordinary men stand around squinting with their mouths open like cows in rain. Fine. Many kings build. Then he starts in on Solomon's wisdom. That is where the room changes. The captain says disputes are brought to him and leave settled. He says difficult matters are answered quickly. He says men who came ready to flatter end up blinking like they forgot their prepared speech. He says Solomon can hear a case, ask a few questions, and cut through lies as neatly as a butcher through goat fat. He says officials in Jerusalem speak of his judgments the way priests speak of sacred things. You can feel the queen's patience tighten by one careful notch. Wise kings exist. Sensible judgments exist. It is nice when rulers are not complete disasters. But the way this man is talking, you would think Jerusalem has produced a walking answer key with a crown on. The captain is not done. He tells of a house built for the God of Israel, bright with gold and cedar and carved work. He says the place gleams. He says the stone is fitted with such precision that the walls seem less built than persuaded into existence. He describes pillars, basins, lampstands, doors, inner rooms, courtyards, altars, vessels polished so bright they practically insult your eyesight. A courtier shifts, another clears his throat. The queen lifts one finger and the room stays quiet. More traders come in over the next weeks, and somehow they are all infected with the same strain of admiration. It is like a fever moving along the caravan roads. One merchant from the coast talks about musicians in Solomon's court, men with harps and lyres so skilled they can make an entire hall go silent between bites of roasted meat. A spice broker swears the king's table groans under daily provisions. Fine flour, oxen, sheep, deer, birds, bread enough to feed a district, wine flowing, servants everywhere. The whole thing sounds less like a government and more like an extremely organized feast with tax obligations. Another traveler, this one thin as a tent pole and twice as bent, claims that Solomon spoke about trees. Trees. Not just cedar either. From the grand ones in Lebanon down to the little scrubby plant that clings to a wall like it pays reduced rent. He talks about animals, birds, creeping things, fish. Apparently this king can discuss botany, animal life, architecture, worship, judgment, governance, and dinner service, without once sounding confused. It is deeply annoying. You watch the queen hear this and not move. That is one of the useful things about rank. You can remain perfectly still while internally rolling your eyes so hard they nearly leave your head. By the third or fourth report, the palace has developed a problem. People keep bringing Jerusalem up. It starts in practical conversations. Cedar prices from the north, security along a route, the availability of worked bronze. Someone mentions a shipment delayed because laborers were tied up on a project for Solomon. Someone else mentions a talented artisan lured away. A scribe reading correspondence pauses over a northern seal, and suddenly everybody in the room gets that little alert look again. Solomon. There he is. Again. You walk the storage halls and hear overseers muttering about market changes because Jerusalem is buying rare woods. You pass the treasury and catch two officials discussing foreign gifts sent north. You go through the perfume rooms and hear a servant say that even the king of Israel burns incense in quantities that would make a lesser court weep. It is one thing for a ruler to be rich. It is another thing for him to become a recurring topic in your own building. celebrity gossip has arrived in the ancient world, and it is wearing a crown. One afternoon, a caravan master arrives half-cooked from the heat and very nearly faints into a basin. After water, bread, and a brief period of staring into the middle distance, like a man reconsidering every life choice that led him here, he is ushered in to report. He has been to Jerusalem. He has seen Solomon's court. He has sold resins, linens, and imported goods to men who buy on royal instruction. He begins soberly enough. Then the details start stacking. The ascent to the king's house, the arrangement of officials, the cupbearers, the attending servants in ordered ranks, the garments, the way food appears in waves as if kitchens underground are spawning it out of the earth. The house of the forest of Lebanon with its cedar columns, which sounds less like a building and more like a very expensive attempt to make indoor trees a personality. He talks about the temple too, and now even the skeptical people are listening. There is gold, yes, but not random gold. Not the frantic sort that says, look, we had a budget and then a problem. Purposeful gold, worked surfaces, sacred vessels, lampstands, tables, carvings of flowers and palm forms and cherubim. The kind of craftsmanship that makes a visitor angry because they were trying not to be impressed. The Queen leans back, not lazily, measuringly. She asks questions now, and when she asks, the room learns something useful. Admiration wilts quickly under precision. She wants dimensions, distances. How many retainers? What route did you take? How many days from the hill country to the coast? Who attended the hearings? What languages were spoken? What tribute was seen? Which officials appeared competent and which appeared decorative? A dramatic merchant is one thing. A dramatic merchant under cross-examination is another. It is beautiful. One man, who burst into the hall earlier that day talking as though he had seen the very gates of heaven and charged entry fees, now stands sweating through his tunic while the Queen asks how many guards stood outside the inner court. He blinks. He hesitates. He says perhaps 20. Another witness says 30. A third says more like 40 in ceremonial attendance, but fewer in the actual guard line. Now you are getting somewhere. Not because the stories are false, because stories bloat in the heat. Every caravan road is full of them. A fortress becomes impregnable. A local feast becomes the banquet of the century. A competent administrator becomes the wisest human being ever assembled. By the time a tale has crossed 3 borders and 6 water stops, it has picked up embroidery like a noblewoman's shawl. Men add details. They trim boredom. They widen gestures. They round numbers upward as though accuracy was somehow rude. But even after the embroidery is peeled back, the cloth underneath is still impressive. That is the problem. A trader from Tyre reports that Solomon works closely with northern craftsmen and secures timber in massive quantities. He speaks of rafts floated down the coast, of labor crews, of joint ventures that only very strong kingdoms can negotiate. Another messenger describes judges and district officers, the organization of supplies, the rotation of provisions. One envoy claims people come just to hear the king speak, just to hear him speak. Imagine crossing mountain roads, sleeping on a bundle that smells like old rope, and sharing a campfire with snoring strangers because a king gives excellent answers. It sounds fake. It sounds unbearable. It sounds exactly like something humans would absolutely do. The Queen's annoyance grows in layers, not childish annoyance, royal annoyance, the refined kind, the polished, elegant irritation of a woman managing a wealthy kingdom while the entire trade network suddenly acts as if one man in Jerusalem has invented thought. She keeps her face composed. She asks sharp questions. She dismisses witnesses. She moves on to grain numbers, harbour tolls, boundary disputes. But the stories linger. At supper, someone mentions Solomon's Proverbs. In the garden, two visitors discuss his building works. In a ledger room, a clerk notes that northern demand has shifted because of royal projects in Jerusalem. In the reception court, an ambassador from a minor region describes the king's reputation with that same awed expression people wear when discussing unusual weather or terrifyingly expensive horses. The queen hears all of it. You can almost hear her thinking, either this man is extraordinary or everyone from Dan to the southern deserts has collectively lost their minds. And then comes the part nobody enjoys admitting. Curiosity is not always dramatic at first. Sometimes it is petty. Sometimes it begins with sheer refusal to let other people have the final word. The queen is not some sheltered noble hearing a distant rumor and swooning into a cushion. She runs a trading kingdom. She listens for exaggeration the way a sailor listens for storms. She knows what men do on long journeys. They talk, they boast, they compare courts, they inflate numbers. They repeat whatever will make them sound well-traveled and important, while hiding the fact that they spent 2 days arguing over moldy barley and a lame camel. So, yes, she is curious. But first she is offended. Not theatrically offended. Quietly, deeply, in the bone. Because the reports keep carrying the same insult inside them. There is a king whose fame for wisdom has reached even here. Even here, where incense burns in palaces and caravans carry half the luxury goods of the known world. Even here, where rulers weigh tribute and judge disputes and manage alliances before breakfast. Even here, they are talking about someone else's throne as though it were the bright center of the earth. That will get your attention. So she starts listening harder. She summons caravan heads separately now, not in groups where one loud idiot can infect the whole room. One by one. You watch them come in dusty and overconfident and leave looking as though they just sat for an oral exam they did not study for. She asks what gifts they saw, what officials they met, what roads were guarded, whether the king personally answered petitions or delegated, whether the worship in Jerusalem looked orderly or chaotic, whether the court seemed stable or merely shiny. Shiny is easy. Stable is expensive. One old trader, leathery as a sandal and about as sentimental, gives the answer that lodges in the queen's mind. He has no dramatic gestures, no flair. He smells like smoke, wool grease, and a medicine pouch that has not been emptied in years. He simply says that in Jerusalem things fit. The buildings fit the wealth. The servants fit the order fits the king. And the king's answers fit the questions. Then he shrugs like a man discussing grain quality. That is somehow more persuasive than all the others. You see the queen's expression shift, just slightly, enough to know the rumor has crossed into another category, no longer amusing, no longer merely irritating. Now it is a problem that wants handling, a claim requiring inspection, a report that has survived too many witnesses to dismiss comfortably. Outside, the caravans keep arriving. Bales are unloaded. Spice sacks are slit open for inspection. Resin lumps knocked together in baskets. Account tablets are pressed and stored. Camels kneel with that wounded, theatrical groan they produce, as if labor itself is a personal betrayal. Flies gather. Harness leather creaks. Somewhere in the yard, a handler is cursing because an animal has chosen this exact moment to relieve itself onto a bundle of dyed cloth worth a minor estate. Trade goes on, but through all of it runs the same glittering thread. Solomon. A singer in the court hears of Jerusalem's musicians and asks whether they are truly that skilled. A master of stores hears of the daily provisions and mutters calculations under his breath. A diplomat hears of foreign envoys and wonders about alliances. A builder hears of cedar halls and wants dimensions. Every profession finds its own reason to care. That is how you know the rumor has become serious. It is no longer just a story. It is logistics, politics, taste, worship, architecture, judgment, prestige. It has entered the bloodstream. One evening, the Queen stands on a roof terrace where the air cools at last, if cools can be used for heat that merely stops trying to murder you personally. Lamps flicker below in the courtyards. Somewhere someone is grinding grain. Somewhere else a servant is rinsing cups. The smell of incense drifts up with roasting meat, old dust, and that faint stable note the whole city carries because animals are everywhere and dignity has limits. A trusted advisor speaks softly beside her. More reports from the north. More talk of the King of Israel. The Queen says nothing for a while. Then she asks how long the road would take with a full caravan. Not a messenger, not a light diplomatic party, a proper royal movement. Guards, goods, gifts, attendants, provisions, the whole lumbering parade. Her advisor starts calculating at once. Water points, seasons, border permissions, security, rest intervals, animals, costs. The answer is not comforting. Months. Of course it is months. Nothing in this world worth seeing is nearby. Everything requires skin damage, inconvenience, and someone in your party developing a foot problem. Still, the question has been asked now. Once it is asked, it hangs there in the air between them like incense smoke. The Queen turns one of her bracelets absently around her wrist. Gold catches lamplight. Below, a camel complains at the moon for reasons known only to itself and perhaps to Satan. A servant laughs somewhere in the dark. The city smells of spice and stone and tired people. The night is thick and warm. She could ignore the rumors. She could let the roads keep talking. She could stay where she is richest, strongest, most at home, and allow some northern king to continue glowing in the distance like a story polished by other men's mouths. But that is not her style. If Solomon is ordinary, she wants to know exactly how ordinary. If he is remarkable, she wants to see what kind of man survives that much praise without collapsing into stupidity. If his court is merely expensive theatre, she will know. If his wisdom is real, she will test it herself. And after the 10th trader says, with a straight face, that one king is wiser than everyone alive, you do what any sensible ruler would do. You start calculating how much gold it takes to arrive unimpressed. The smell changes before the gates even open. Inside the palace compound, everything has been oil, polished wood, incense, and controlled dignity. Outside, in the loading yards, dignity is taking a beating. You step into heat, dust, camel spit, trampled straw, and the thick medicinal sweetness of frankincense, packed so densely it feels like the air itself has been seasoned. And now the palace walls fall behind you, because testing a king apparently requires crossing half the known world with an entire perfumery strapped to livestock. The yard is already chaos, not dramatic battle chaos. Worse, administrative chaos. The kind involving shouting, wax seals, ropes, missing inventory tablets, and one man insisting that his camel absolutely cannot carry another chest because last time it sat down in protest for an entire afternoon. Somewhere, a scribe is trying to keep his reed pen steady while a pack donkey nudges his elbow with the persistence of a tax collector. You can feel the whole kingdom trying to leave at once. Servants hurry past with baskets of dried dates, sacks of grain, folded tent cloth, and bundled bedding that smells like cedar chests and old sweat. Guards in leather and linen check spear points, adjust belts, and try to look majestic while standing ankle-deep in droppings. Cooks are arguing over copper pots with the severity of men defending national security, which, honestly, they are. You do not cross deserts on charm alone. Charm does not boil lentils. Charm does not patch a torn waterskin. Charm does not stop 20 expensive camels from wandering off because someone forgot to tie a proper knot. A royal expedition lives or dies by rope, water, grain, and whether anyone remembered the salt. The Queen knows this. She does not sweep into the yard like a woman play-acting at hardship. She arrives knowing exactly how ugly logistics become when you drag prestige across open country. Gold glints at her wrists, linen falls clean and sharp, and her expression says what every overworked ruler has said since the beginning of time. Why is everyone incompetent the moment I look away? A steward bows so fast you worry for his spine. He presents a tablet. She takes it. She scans the columns with that quick, dangerous calm that means somebody is about to have a difficult morning. One shipment of myrrh is short by 3 sealed jars. A chest of worked gold has not been weighed in her presence. 2 additional guards are needed on the western flank of the caravan because bandits also enjoy luxury goods and low-effort theft. Nobody breathes much while she reads. Then she starts giving orders. Not loud, not theatrical. Worse, precise. You reweigh that chest. You count the skins again. You find out why the spice crates marked for tribute are sitting in direct sun like they are trying to cook themselves. You get the strange feeling that if Solomon really is wise, he is about to meet his match in organized irritation. The gifts alone could start a small economy. Gold vessels gleam on woven mats, while servants wrap them in layers of cloth and padded leather. Precious stones sit sorted in little trays, flashing red, green, blue, and clear like condensed sunlight. Ivory carvings, fine fabrics, carved boxes of resin, polished woods, and scented oils wait their turn to be packed, sealed, and listed. The spice stores are somehow even more serious. Frankincense tears, pale and golden, rattle into jars. Myrrh, dark and bitter and expensive enough to make merchants emotional, gets measured with obsessive care. Cinnamon, cassia, and other aromatics lie bundled in cloth, their smells rising hot and sharp until your nose goes half numb. It is less like packing for a diplomatic visit and more like preparing to seduce an entire capital by smell alone. Which is not a bad strategy. Every chest gets sealed with wax. Every seal gets checked twice, because losing a gold cup to highway thieves is embarrassing, but arriving with a broken royal seal is worse. Scribes crouch on low stools with tablets on their knees, recording quantities while sweat rolls down their temples. Their fingers are stained with wax, dust, and ink. One of them has a smear of myrrh on his sleeve, and now smells like an extremely anxious funeral. The animals are not impressed. Camels kneel in rows, grumbling from some deep internal chamber where resentment is apparently stored in abundance. Their long necks sway. Their lips pull back in expressions of biblical contempt. One turns and sneezes directly onto a handler who has done nothing to deserve this, except work with camels, which unfortunately covers quite a lot. Nobody likes loading day. The camels hate it. The handlers hate it. The donkeys hate existing in general, so this fits the theme nicely. Even the horses look offended, tossing their heads as if to say they were bred for glory, not to stand beside a mound of folded tent poles and 6 sacks of onions. The water situation is its own nightmare. Skins are stacked in heavy, sloshing piles, each one smelling of leather, animal fat, and the ghost of every liquid it ever carried before. Men lift them with grunts and shoulders already rubbed raw. They test the seams. They tie them down. Then someone unties them again, because another steward has decided the balance is wrong. And if the load shifts on a mountain path, congratulations, your drinking supply is now decorating a ravine. Every problem has 3 smaller problems tucked inside it. You pack grain, then remember the grinding stones. You pack tents, then remember the pegs. You pack gifts, then remember the guards needed to keep bored men from casually helping themselves to royal merchandise. Ancient travel is just one long chain of realizing you forgot something important and being unable to order it for next day delivery. No privacy either. Every courtyard, hallway, and storage room is full of bodies moving with forced purpose. Porters brush past one another, hip to hip. Servants shout over the noise. Stable hands smell like manure and hot rope. Perfumed attendants drift through it all carrying lacquered boxes, trying not to gag while walking through an aroma made of incense, wool, dung, and sun-cooked humanity. It is wealth, but sweating. By midday the yard shimmers. Heat slides off stone walls and settles on your shoulders like a badly intentioned blanket. Linen sticks to skin. Dust creeps into your sandals. Somebody has dropped a sack of barley, and now 2 boys are scooping it up with the desperate speed of people who know grain is money and also dinner. A cook is tasting stored water and making the face of a man drinking from a disappointed sandal. Still, the packing continues. The Queen's personal tent is rolled and wrapped, thick cloth layered against both sun and wind. Smaller tents follow for officers, scribes, servants, and whoever has to sleep closest to the animals and wake up smelling like a failed barn. Bedrolls are tied. Blankets are bundled. Folding stools, writing kits, storage baskets, lamp oil, tinder, spare sandals, extra harness straps, and medicine bundles all disappear into the moving mountain of supplies. Then come the questions. How many guards ride ahead? Who handles the tribute beasts? Which route avoids the worst wells and the worst people, though often these are the same? How much flour per week? How much dried meat? Who among the servants gets sick from bad water? Who snores loud enough to start fights in shared tents? These things matter. An empire may glitter on a map, but on the road it comes down to cracked heels, bowel distress, and whether your cook can make a respectable meal out of lentils and old onions. Grandeur is fragile. One infected blister and a man's whole personality changes. One spoiled ration, and suddenly half the camp is leaning behind bushes, reconsidering every life choice. The Queen inspects the gift animals next. These are not random beasts pulled from a pen. These are chosen creatures, brushed, ornamented, and made to look as prosperous as possible despite their strong desire to smell like themselves. Gold fittings catch the light. Colored cloth hangs from saddles. Bells and tassels tremble. Underneath all that, the animals remain what they are. Large, moody, and fully capable of stepping on your foot, hard enough to introduce you to fresh religious vocabulary. A young official tries to sound reassuring. He says the caravan will move with excellent discipline. At that exact moment, a donkey gets loose and sprints between two loaded camels with a string of copper cups tied to its pack, clanging like a one-animal disaster parade. 3 handlers chase it. 1 falls. Another loses a sandal. The donkey keeps going with the grim joy of a creature briefly free from management. The queen does not laugh. You do. Quietly. By evening, wax seals harden in the fading light. The treasure chests are lined in a row under guard, each one banded, tied, and stamped. Spears shine dull red in the sunset. Lists are checked against lists, because someone always writes 7 when he means 6, and then the whole thing collapses into accusations. The cooks have started the meal, and smoke from their fires drifts over the yard, carrying the smell of lentils, garlic, singed grain, and whatever unfortunate herb got thrown in to pretend this is festive. The conversation shifts. Now it is not about packing, but about leaving. Families appear at the edges of the compound, wives bringing bread, children staring at the camels with the fascinated horror reserved for ugly animals and elderly relatives. An old mother presses a packet of dried figs into her son's hand and tells him 3 times not to drink from suspicious wells, as though suspicious wells politely identify themselves. Night settles hot and slow. You'd think people would sleep. Absolutely not. Departure has its own fever. Men mend straps by lamplight. Scribes recopy names. A guard sharpens a blade with long, tired strokes, while another oils a shield rim. Somewhere in the dark, somebody is still arguing about whether the Queen's secondary incense chest should travel near the front or the middle, because apparently civilizations are built on exactly this level of pettiness. By dawn, the whole palace is awake again, not gracefully, more like dragged out of bed by trumpets, urgency, and livestock noise. Torches gutter in the half-light. The air is cooler for a few precious moments, smelling of ash, damp dust, and animal breath. Men yawn wide enough to show every flaw in their teeth. Then the shouting begins afresh. Handlers haul kneeling camels upright one by one, which is always a surprise no matter how many times you've seen it. The creatures rise in stages, back legs first, front legs after, turning every load into a small test of rope integrity and human faith. Chests sway, water skins slap. One servant nearly disappears under a sliding bale of cloth and emerges looking personally betrayed by woven goods. You join the movement toward the gate. The line stretches farther than seems reasonable. Guards first, scouts and outriders, then the loaded animals, then carts where the ground allows, then servants, scribes, cooks, attendants, and those poor souls whose official job is basically fix whatever falls apart. The Queen rides within the caravan's heart, shaded, guarded, and very much in command. The city gathers to watch. Of course it does. People love departures because they cost nothing to observe and involve other people's discomfort. Market women stand with crossed arms and narrowed eyes, taking in the scale of it all. Traders count animals under their breath and estimate wealth with the speed of men whose brains are part abacus. Children point at the glittering fittings and the towering camels and ask whether the Queen is going to the ends of the earth. At the moment, it feels like yes. The gates open wide. Sunlight pours through in a flat white sheet, already threatening. Beyond lies the road, if road is the term we are generously using for a long, uncertain ribbon of dust, stone, bad footing, and delayed regret. Once you pass through, the comforts of home begin shrinking behind you. Shade becomes a memory with architecture. Nobody turns back. Well, one porter does for a minute because he forgot a bundle of spare sandals. Then nobody turns back. The caravan lurches forward with all the elegance of a palace trying to walk. Bells clink, harnesses creak, sandals scuff. Camels issue their complaints in bubbling, offended groans. The first hour is mostly noise, compression, and everybody learning anew that ancient travel means being jostled by objects, elbows, and the consequences of your queen's ambition. Dust rises almost immediately. It gets in your nose, your eyes, your mouth, your hair, the folds of your clothes, and probably your soul. You taste grit with every breath. The sweet perfume of the tribute spices drifts through it in strange bursts, so one moment you smell like a temple, and the next like a stable floor after a warm afternoon. It is a luxury procession wrapped in a barnyard. The sun climbs. So does the misery. By mid-morning, your shoulders ache from doing nothing but staying balanced. The riders shift in their saddles. The walkers develop that resigned forward lean of people who know this is only the beginning. A servant with elegant hands already has a blister opening on his heel. Another keeps lifting his robe clear of the dust, which is adorable because the dust does not care. Breakfast had been quick and insulting. Flat bread, dried fruit, a mouthful of cheese if you were lucky and on good terms with the provisioning staff. Now everyone is chewing slowly and saving water because the day is long, and the people who get casual around water become legends for bad reasons. Nobody wants to be remembered as the idiot who drank half a skin before noon. The Queen keeps pace. You notice that. She does not retreat into some fantasy of effortless royalty. She rides, watches, asks for updates, adjusts the order when needed. A messenger comes and goes. A handler reports a split strap. A guard captain points out a weaker section of the train and receives instructions before you can blink. Her authority travels as steadily as the caravan itself. That steadies everyone else. It has to. Because once the city is gone and the land starts opening around you, the scale of the undertaking becomes unpleasantly clear. This is not a brisk visit. This is not popping over to ask a famous king a few clever questions over lunch. This is months of sun, sore backs, stale bread, tense borders, and the collective body odor of several hundred determined people sealed together by logistics. By noon, the smell has matured. Sun-baked wool, old leather, garlic sweat, camel breath, donkey hide, lamp oil, dust, and stubborn ambition. That is the fragrance profile now. Someone uncorks a jar of myrrh to check a seal, and for one glorious moment, the whole line smells expensive again. Then the jar is closed and the camels resume being themselves. Rest comes late. When the stop is finally called, the entire caravan exhales with the tragic sound of a civilization sitting down. Loads are eased. Knees crack. Boots come off. Sand pours from sandals in quantities that feel spiteful. The cooks begin working almost before their own backs straighten, because hunger is a louder king than Solomon, wisdom or no wisdom. Camp set up is another comedy. Tents go up crooked. Tent pegs vanish into hard ground and require hammering with rocks because somebody packed the mallets under 3 rolled carpets and a crate of tribute resin. Water is rationed. Fires are coaxed from stubborn fuel. One scribe tries to write the day's accounting while a fly explores his eyelid with intimate enthusiasm. You get your first real taste of road life. There is no privacy worth naming. If you wash, someone sees. If you complain, 5 people hear. If you need the bushes, good luck finding one that is not already occupied by a guard pretending not to make eye contact. Palace life had curtains, walls, and perfumed chambers. Caravan life has open sky and an extremely public relationship with discomfort. The food arrives in bowls: lentils, onions, coarse bread, maybe a little dried meat if the quartermasters are feeling charitable. Smoke clings to everything. Ash settles in the pot. Somebody burns his fingers and swears. Somebody else laughs too hard because exhaustion makes all human beings slightly stupid after sunset. Then the talking starts, not the gossip from the market road. Different now. Practical talk. Tomorrow's distance. The next reliable well. The condition of the animals. Whether the western track is safer this season. Whether Jerusalem truly gleams like people claim, or whether merchants have once again taken a perfectly respectable city and inflated it into a miracle because they enjoy drama. The Queen hears all of it. She sits beneath lamplight with her attendants and officers, the day's dust still on the hems of fine cloth, and studies route reports while the camp settles around her. Even at rest, the expedition does not really stop. Guards rotate. Animals huff and shift. Embers pop. Somewhere in the dark, one camel groans like an old door haunted by grudges. This is only day 1. That lands on you with particular rudeness. All this planning, all this loading, all this noise, expense, ceremony, and aching inconvenience, and you are barely out of Sheba's reach. Ahead lie more days exactly like this, then harder ones, hotter ones, longer ones, days when the water tastes like skins and dust, nights when the wind slaps tent cloth till nobody sleeps. Still, no one suggests turning back, because the gifts are packed, the seals are set. The Queen has left her palace, and somewhere far to the north, on hills still invisible from here, sits a king with a reputation big enough to drag an entire perfumed empire onto camels and send it rattling into the wilderness. The fires burn lower, voices fade one by one. Guards pace the edge of camp with spears dark against the night. Animals settle onto folded legs, muttering to themselves in the foul little language of the deeply inconvenienced. Above, the sky opens wide and hard, full of stars that look close enough to touch and absolutely uninterested in your sore feet. Tomorrow the road will start asking more of you. And somewhere beyond the dust, the story continues. Weeks pass. Then more weeks. The spices are still fragrant, the camels are still judgmental, and Jerusalem is finally somewhere ahead of the dust. The rhythm of the road gets into your bones, whether you want it or not. Wake before dawn. Shake grit out of everything. Eat something chewy and disappointing. Check ropes, count jars, inspect animals. Listen to somebody complain that a chest shifted in the night. Then start moving before the sun remembers it hates you personally. By midday, your mouth feels lined with wool. The Queen rides near the center of the caravan, where the guards can see her, and the officials can pretend this arrangement is orderly. It is not orderly. It is a moving argument held together by leather straps, curses, and the desperate hope that nobody loses a water skin. You look down the line and see swaying necks, flapping cloth, sweating men, and one scribe trying to write while bouncing on a camel, which is a terrible idea and should be punished. The camels object to everything. They object to the pace, the heat, the wind, the burden, the pauses, the resumes, the existence of hills, and occasionally to reality itself. One turns its head and looks at you with the expression of a tax collector who knows you brought the wrong forms. Another produces a noise from deep in its soul that sounds like an old door possessed by bitterness. This goes on for months. Not a dramatic sprint through some cinematic desert with flattering lighting and a musical score. No. This is long-distance Bronze Age logistics. This is cracked lips, sunburned ears, raw thighs, and the constant awareness that one bad decision about water could make everybody very quiet in the worst possible way. The days begin to blur, but never enough to become easy. Morning is cold at first, the kind of cold that sneaks under your robe and settles in your joints. You shiver while the camp comes awake in mutters and coughs, while cook fires spit, while sleepy servants rub their faces and try to remember why they agreed to be born into this century. Then the sun climbs, and suddenly the world is a forge. Light bounces off stone hard enough to make your eyes ache. The sand reflects heat upward. The sky goes white at the edges. Your scalp feels cooked through your head covering, and every metal clasp on every box becomes a tiny instrument of vengeance. By afternoon, people stop speaking unless necessary. Talking uses moisture. Moisture is now more precious than gold, and, frankly, more useful. The guards scan the horizon with narrowed eyes. Handlers tug reluctant animals forward. Somewhere behind you, a jar breaks, and the sound travels down the caravan like a funeral announcement. Everyone turns. The smell rises first. Sweet resin, sharp and rich, frankincense spilling into hot dust. For one horrible moment, it seems almost luxurious. Then you remember how much that jar cost, and how far it came, and luxury turns into accounting pain. The handler who dropped it stands there covered in resin and shame, while a supervisor stares at him with the dead expression of a man mentally subtracting his wages until the end of time. The Queen does not stop the caravan for long. That is part of what keeps this whole groaning beast moving south to north and north to south across half the known world. She is not on a pleasure cruise. She did not pack an entire kingdom onto camels so everybody could sit in circles processing their emotions about broken pottery. The resin gets scraped up as best it can. The shards are tossed aside. The line lurches forward again. That night the camp smells expensive. Frankincense clings to the dust. Myrrh leaks from another chest because apparently the containers have entered a season of rebellion. Smoke from dung fires drifts low over the tents. Sweat, leather, camel breath, and spice mingle into something so powerful it feels almost visible. You lie down wrapped in your cloak and breathe in what amounts to the perfume counter of a collapsing marketplace. Sleep comes in pieces. The ground is too hard, the air too sharp, and somebody nearby snores like a saw through wet wood. A guard clears his throat every 7 minutes, as if rehearsing for a role. Camels groan and belch in the dark. One of them kneels with a theatrical sigh so loaded with disappointment you almost want to apologize. Above you, the sky is outrageous. Not soft, not dreamy. Hard, bright stars, thousands of them, needling the black. Constellations sharpen over the camp like carved ice. You can see the path of the heavens more clearly than the path under your own feet, which feels rude. The Queen lies awake longer than most, looking up through the tent flap, listening to the low murmur of her people and the shifting complaints of beasts. Jerusalem is still far away, but the road has a way of feeding stories to travelers. At wells, at trading posts, in dusty compounds built around courtyards full of flies and shouting, someone always has news. The caravan limps in, everybody coated in travel grime, and there will be a man with sun-peeled cheeks eager to tell anyone who will listen that he just came from the north. You hear the name again, Solomon, always with that same tone too. Half admiration, half disbelief, like people are still trying to decide whether the reports are serious or the ancient world has simply committed to a bit. A merchant adjusting a sandal strap says the king settled a dispute so cleanly both sides left praising him. A drover chewing dates says the palace servants move like clockwork. A spice broker with one lazy eye swears the king's drinking vessels gleam like captured sunlight. You chew your dry bread and try not to look impressed. The queen definitely tries not to look impressed. She listens while having her hands washed from a travel basin that already smells faintly of copper and old soap. Her face stays calm. Her back stays straight. But you can feel it sharpening in her, that determination that started as curiosity and has now become something tougher. Because every mile makes turning back more ridiculous. At first, this expedition could have been dismissed as an extravagant whim. A royal mood, a woman with incense money and too much confidence deciding to go inspect a famous man. But once you've crossed this much hostile ground, once you've paid in sweat, sleep and cartilage, the whole thing changes. This is no longer curiosity with jewelry on. This is commitment, and commitment smells bad. A week later, the land changes. The long open stretches break against uplands and rocky passes where the path narrows and the caravan bunches together. Hooves scrape stone. Wheels on the heavier carts shriek in protest. Loose rocks skitter down slopes and make everybody look up at once with the same expression. If this mountain starts anything, we are all going to be furious. The wind finds you there. Not warm this time, mean. It comes funneled through the pass carrying dust so fine it slides through fabric, teeth, hair and basic human dignity. You wrap your face and still taste grit. Everyone tastes grit. The cooks later will make stew that somehow crunches. That evening, while camp is pitched in the lee of a boulder field, a servant spits into the fire and produces mud. You eat anyway. Barley cakes, dried figs, tough strips of meat that ask a great deal of your jaw. Lentils cooked in a pot blackened by 100 previous meals, and at least 3 arguments. The Queen's table, such as it is, remains finer than most, but even royal travel cuisine eventually becomes variations on boiled endurance. No one is fresh anymore. The perfumes help, but only in the way a garland helps a donkey. There is sweat under the perfume, dust under the sweat, wool holding onto all of it like a personal grudge. Hair gets braided, covered, recovered, and still emerges smelling faintly singed by sun and campfire. Sandals rub blisters into feet that were never consulted. But the Queen does not complain where others can hear. She gets dust in her lashes like everyone else. Her lips crack in the dry wind. The jolting ride punishes her back and hips. She has to stop behind a screen held up by loyal women for the same humiliating biological reasons as the rest of humanity, because being royal does not exempt you from inconvenient organs. Yet every morning she mounts again. That matters to the people around her, because nothing drains a caravan faster than a leader who goes soft before the second month. Men will endure astonishing discomfort for someone they believe is enduring it too. They see her rise in the cold. They see her ride in the heat, They see her refuse to cut the day short just because the road is ugly and her shoulders ache. And so the line keeps moving, grumbling but moving. Then comes the storm. You spot it first as a smear on the horizon, low and brown and wrong. The handlers start shouting. Guards begin pulling cloth over nose and mouth. Tents are useless now. This is not rain politely arriving to improve morale. This is a wall of dust charging at you, like the desert has finally lost patience. The first blast steals your breath. Sand hits skin like thrown grit from a potter's wheel. Eyes clamp shut. Camels bawl and lurch, offended beyond language. Men grab lead ropes and lean their whole weight backward. Somebody is yelling for the queen. Somebody else is yelling for the spice chests. A third person is probably yelling the names of all his regrets. Everything turns brown. The air itself becomes dirt. You can barely see the animal in front of you. Cloth whips against your face. Sand gets in your ears, under your nails, into the folds of your clothing, and, against all decency, into places sand should never visit. You crouch with your back to the wind and feel the storm batter the world flat. It lasts forever, which in practical terms means less than an hour, but your skin insists it was an era. When it finally passes, everyone stands up slowly, transformed into rough sculptures made of grit and resentment. The camp looks half buried. Gear has shifted. One cooking pot is gone forever, presumably now ruling a small dune kingdom somewhere to the east. The queen brushes sand from her face and starts giving orders immediately. Find the missing bundles, check the animals, count the guards, uncover the water jars, see what tore, see what spilled. No one has time for melodrama, though several camels continue performing it anyway with remarkable dedication. That night, the caravan is quiet, not peaceful, exhausted. You pour sand from your sandals. You shake sand from your bedding. You discover sand in your dinner and accept that resistance is futile. A man 3 tents over sneezes 12 times in a row and receives no sympathy because everyone else is planning the same performance. Morning comes. You move again. At some trading stations, the welcome is all business. Gates open after inspection. Names are asked. Seals are checked. Guards eye the treasure with professional longing. Scribes compare tablets under awnings buzzing with flies. Someone always wants a fee. Someone always acts surprised that a royal caravan the length of a bad decision needs space, fodder, and water. Border checkpoints are their own special misery. You stand in line in the heat while officials with smug beards and very little urgency inspect loads one by one. They poke sacks, lift lids, ask where you came from, where you're going, why so many guards, why so many spices, why so much gold, why one camel appears to hate them. The answer to the last question is that the camel appears to hate everyone. Time dies there. You watch shadows crawl across the ground while a local officer debates stamp marks as though the fate of civilization hangs on his opinion of wax impressions. Men sweat through tunics. Animals spit. A child attached to some checkpoint household stares openly at the queen's attendants until his mother yanks him away by the arm. Finally, the barriers lift, and once more the line uncoils onto the road, every person wearing the same expression, relief mixed with a desire to never discuss this stop again. The queen says little, but later that evening she has the scribes review permits and seals by lamplight. You can tell she intends to arrive in Jerusalem with dignity intact, even if half the caravan smells like baked onions and temper. Sometimes the road dips toward greener places, not paradise. Calm down. But a cluster of palms around a spring can feel like the mercy of God and competent engineering combined. Water glints. Birds appear as if summoned by gossip. Men laugh more easily while filling skins. Even the camels look less insulted for an hour or two, though they quickly recover. Those are the nights people almost enjoy themselves. Almost. Fires burn brighter. Someone plucks at a stringed instrument with dusty fingers. Dates and flatbread make the rounds. A guard tells a joke so bad it still succeeds because everyone is tired. One of the Queen's women oils her hair with myrrh, and for a brief moment the camp smells less like labor and more like home. Then dawn arrives and the miracle ends. Back onto the road, back into heat, flies, saddle sores, and the constant slap of rope against load. The same hills, the same glare, the same noble mission wrapped in deeply undignified transportation. Great quests always sound better indoors. And still the rumors keep finding you. In one town, a copper dealer says Solomon speaks of trees and beasts, like a man who interviewed them personally. In another, a traveller from farther north insists the king's throne is unlike anything on earth. 6 steps, lions, ivory, gold. The man describing it looks half annoyed by his own awe, which makes the whole thing worse. You watch the Queen's face. She does not roll her eyes anymore. Early in the journey, maybe, back when these reports were fresh and easy to dismiss. But now she listens the way a hunter listens for movement in brush, focused, still, already measuring what she will ask and how deeply she will cut. Because this has become a test in both directions. Yes, she is going to test the king. That was always the point. Hard questions, sharp ones, questions with layers, with hooks, with no easy answer. But the road is testing her first. Every mile asks whether this matters enough. Whether wisdom is worth cracked skin, delayed sleep, swollen feet, and months spent eating travel stew that tastes faintly of smoke and obligation. Her answer remains yes. You see it one morning when the caravan crests a ridge just after dawn. The air is cool for once. The eastern light spills across the rocks in pale gold. Below, the road unwinds through dry country toward lands you have not yet seen. Everybody pauses for breath, for adjusting straps, for muttered gratitude that at least nobody died in the night. The Queen looks north and smiles. Not a broad grin, nothing theatrical, just the small, hard smile of someone who has chosen a thing and is now too far in to be moved. She has heard enough to know this journey may end in astonishment or irritation, but not in indifference. You do not drag half a treasury across deserts to exchange pleasantries over figs. By now, the caravan itself has changed shape. Faces are leaner. Clothing hangs differently. Skin has darkened and roughened under sun and wind. The servants who started this trip fussing over cushions now throw down camp gear with the blunt efficiency of veterans. Even the scribes have developed the 1,000-yard stare of men who have copied figures by lantern while a camel screamed nearby. The animals are worse-tempered and somehow wiser. They know the signs of stopping before the people do. They sense water before anyone admits hope. They also know exactly when a handler is distracted and use that moment to chew rope, steal grain, or sit down in protest like large furry bureaucrats. One elderly camel develops a habit of making eye contact before refusing to rise, which feels intentional and frankly insulting. Still, it rises eventually. Everything does. The camp, the smoke, the complaints, the sun. Another week peels away, then another. Sand gives way to packed earth in places, scrubland in others, villages clinging to wells, fortresses on hills, roads more travelled, accents shifting around you. The north is drawing nearer, not with fanfare, but with administrative detail. There are more patrols now, more walls, more tolls, more signs that you are entering lands threaded by stronger kings and tighter systems. Wagons pass carrying grain. Messengers ride harder roads. Farmers look up from fields as the Queen's caravan goes by, their faces arranged in that universal expression meaning, well, this is clearly somebody expensive. Word outruns you now. By the time you stop at larger stations, people already know a southern queen is on the road to Jerusalem. You feel eyes on the gift chests, on the guards, on the banners, on the queen herself whenever the wind shifts the curtain of her litter or she rides uncovered for air. Curiosity buzzes around the caravan like flies over syrup, so the mission grows heavier, not because the loads increase, though somehow everything still feels heavier, because expectation gathers around it. This is no longer private curiosity carried through lonely desert. This is becoming an event, a meeting people will talk about in courts and markets and over suppers, where the bread is stale and the gossip fresh. And then comes the stretch nobody can rush, the final stretch, the road after all the roads. You think reaching the north would make everyone lighter, but in some ways it makes them tighter. Packs are checked more carefully, robes are beaten clean, gifts are inspected for damage, hair is combed, nails are cleaned. The caravan still smells like travel, but now it also smells like preparation. Because soon there will be no more rehearsal. Soon the queen will stand in another king's court with all of this dust behind her and all of those rumours in front of her. Every blister, every checkpoint, every storm, every night under those hard stars has been the price of reaching that room. Months of endurance before a single real question can be asked. And the question has only grown. What kind of king makes strangers cross wilderness just to see whether the reports are true? The sun lowers red one evening as you camp on higher ground. Fires blink alive across the encampment. The cooks stir pots. Guards set watches. Tethered animals crop at thin forage and complain between mouthfuls like old men in a queue. From somewhere ahead, carried through the cooling air, comes new talk of Jerusalem's hills. The queen hears it and says nothing. She sits near the lamplight while a servant brushes dust from the hem of her robe. Behind her, stacked chests hold gold, spices, carved treasures, and the practical proof that this journey was never casual. Beyond her, the dark spreads over the road already travelled. Ahead lies the city, the palace, the questions, the man who may finally be equal to his reputation. The stars come out one by one, and for the first time in many weeks, the caravan can almost taste arrival. Not yet, not tomorrow perhaps, but soon. Soon the dust will settle on Jerusalem's stones instead of the open road. Soon all this endurance will step into cedar halls and polished courts and find out whether wisdom can really live up to rumour. For now, the night holds its breath, and the camels, deeply against their will, kneel in the dark and wait. The smell changes before the city fully appears. For weeks, the air has been sun, leather, animal breath, and your own patience slowly roasting inside your skull. Now, as the road lifts and bends, something new reaches you. Smoke from cooking fires, crushed herbs, hot stone, sheep, fresh bread, human density. It smells like a hilltop city trying very hard to be important while 1,000 people sweat on it at once. And now you see why people would not stop talking. Jerusalem climbs the ridges in layers, pale walls catching the sun, houses stacked where the slopes allow them, roofs huddled together like they are sharing gossip. It is busy from a distance, clattering, calling, moving. Not the sprawling market wealth of Sheba, spread wide under open heat, but something tighter, steeper, more concentrated, like all the ambition has been piled onto a mountain and told to perform. The queen beside you does not gasp. That would be amateur hour. She sits upright on her mount with the exact expression of a woman who has crossed half the known world and refuses to let a city have the satisfaction of seeing her impressed too early. But you can feel the slight stillness in the caravan. The servants see it, the guards see it, even the camels seem to notice, though they react to everything with the same offended face, so it is hard to be certain. The road gets crowded fast. Farmers are bringing produce in. Traders are hauling skins, baskets, cages, and at least one deeply miserable goat that keeps trying to turn around and go home. Donkeys push past with the confidence of creatures that know they are small enough to cause chaos and too stubborn to apologize. Children dart between legs. A pot seller shouts prices like this is a personal emergency. Dust rises with every step. It sticks to your ankles, your hem, the sweat at the back of your neck. You have traveled months to reach one man, and your grand arrival is through a crush of livestock, shouting vendors, and somebody dropping onions in the road. Ancient royalty, everybody. Glamour with flies. At the gate, officials are already waiting. Of course they are. Nobody has dragged a spice mountain across the desert quietly. Word reached the city long before you did. So there they stand in arranged dignity, robes brushed, beards tidied, trying to look as though foreign queens arrive every Tuesday, and this is all very normal. You can smell their oil from here, mixed with heat and dust, and the faint, stale scent of men who have been standing ceremonially in the sun too long. Greetings begin. Formal ones, long ones, the sort of greetings that could die of old age before the actual point arrives. Blessings, titles, references to peace, honor, roads, health, mutual respect, and enough verbal embroidery to outfit a wedding canopy. Everyone smiles the measured smile of people trying not to insult each other internationally. Meanwhile, a mule relieves itself 6 feet away. That, more than anything, keeps the whole scene grounded. The queen dismounts with controlled grace, not fast, not slow. She moves like she has not spent months sleeping beside baggage and listening to snoring through goat-scented tent cloth. A lesser traveler might collapse directly onto the nearest rug and ask for water, bread, and a room with no camel in it. She gives the officials exactly the amount of courtesy required, and not 1 grain more. Then you enter the city. Inside the walls, the streets twist upward between stone houses and workshops, the whole place alive with noise. Hammering from a smith, women calling from doorways, water sloshing from jars, merchants pitching figs, lentils, oil, and dyed cloth, as if they personally invented commerce. The smells come in waves: baking bread, fish, dung, garlic, wet clay, fleece, sweat, smoke, and a sweetness from crushed dates that almost makes up for the dung. Almost. People stare, obviously. You would too. A queen from the south does not arrive quietly. Not when her caravan glitters. Not when camels are burdened with chests, sacks of spices, worked gold, and enough expensive fabric to make half the city emotionally unstable. Heads turn from balconies. Apprentices forget their tasks. Somebody nearly walks into a wall while trying to look dignified and failing magnificently. The city keeps climbing. That is the thing about Jerusalem. Nothing is content to stay flat. Every lane seems to tilt upward. Every staircase dares your calves to complain. Every corner reveals another rise. By the time you near the royal complex, your legs are making private threats. If wisdom lives here, apparently it lives on a hill, because ordinary inconvenience was not enough. And then the palace comes into view. You have seen wealthy places before. You are from Sheba. You know what polished rooms and guarded treasure smell like. You know the look of carved wood, worked stone, imported luxury, and attendants who glide around pretending they were born holding trays. But this place is not merely wealthy. This place is composed, arranged, staged with the concentration of a man who knows people are talking and has decided not to disappoint them. Cedar hits you first. Not a little of it either. Great beams and paneling, resinous and rich, warm in the sun, smelling sharp and clean above the human traffic. It is the scent of forests hauled from far away, cut, shaped, transported, lifted, fitted and polished, until even the air feels expensive. After months of tents, sweat and travel grime, that cedar smell lands like an insultingly elegant slap. Then the gold starts happening. Not in one manageable place, everywhere. It flashes on vessels, fittings, decorative work, shields, details your eye cannot even process before another bright surface catches it. It is on doors, trim, furnishings, ceremonial objects, and whatever else someone could reasonably or unreasonably plate. You look around and get the distinct impression that Solomon saw one ordinary surface in his youth and took it personally. Even the light behaves differently here. Sun pours into courtyards and bounces from polished metal, pale stone, and dressed wood until the whole space seems to hum. Servants move through it in practiced routes, carrying water, wine, trays, cloths, basins, documents, and messages. They do not wander. They flow. Every person appears to know where to stand, where to turn, when to bow, and how to avoid colliding with somebody holding pomegranate sauce. That alone is impressive. Getting this many people to move in coordination without constant screaming is nearly a miracle. You are led through an outer court first, where guards stand in disciplined rows with spears gleaming and expressions arranged into the royal version of customer service. Severe but welcoming. Deadly but polite. Their armor smells of oil, leather, and sun-heated metal. Their sandals are cleaner than yours, which after this journey feels frankly provocative. More attendants appear, water for hands, towels, cooling drink, questions about accommodations, baggage, animals, gifts, personnel, and the Queen's comfort. So many questions. So much graceful efficiency. It is like being swallowed by an extremely luxurious machine. Somewhere beyond the courtyards, someone is playing strings softly enough to seem effortless, which only makes you more suspicious. The Queen notices everything: that servant's accent, that official's sleeve border, the quality of the bronze hinges, the condition of the paving stones, whether the men carrying the jars look fed or frightened, whether the guards are ceremonial ornaments or actual soldiers. She watches with the calm face of a woman sorting treasure from theatre in real time. Because that is the question, isn't it? Anybody with enough money can make a place glitter. Any king with access to timber, labor, and a deep commitment to his own reputation can build a palace that leaves visitors blinking like moles in sunlight. Wealth is loud, Gold practically yells. But wisdom has to survive under close inspection, and close inspection has now arrived wearing desert dust and royal perfume. You move deeper inside. Columns line a great hall, their surfaces smoothed and darkened, cedar overhead breathing that clean resin smell into the warm air. Woven hangings mute some of the echo. Lamps hang in ordered places. Bronze catches light. The floor is swept so thoroughly you almost want to apologize for your sandals. Your reflection appears faintly in a polished basin and looks like somebody who has recently negotiated with a sandstorm. There are seats for officials, not random seats either. Ranked seats, precise seats, seats that tell you in one glance who matters more, and who would very much like to matter more next year. Men are arranged according to office, seniority, function, favor, and the complicated mathematics of court life. They wear fine fabrics, belts worked with metal, trimmed beards, and expressions of intense self-control. Some are curious. Some are sizing up your caravan mentally and trying not to show it. Some are doing the court thing where they pretend to be too accustomed to splendor to care, while caring a great deal. You can almost hear their brains clicking. How much gold? How many attendants? What quality of spice? Is that southern weaving? Are those imported stones? Ancient diplomacy is 80% ceremony and 20% desperately civilized staring. Then come the food arrangements. Oh, the food. Not merely a meal. A performance disguised as abundance. Trays of roasted meat glistening with fat. Bread in quantities that suggest someone is feeding both a court and a small militia. Bowls of fruit. Dishes of herbs. Lentils, curds, honey, nuts, cakes, wine, oil, sauces, and all the rich little things that only appear when somebody important is watching. The aromas stack on top of each other until the air itself feels edible. After caravan food, it is almost offensive. For months, your menu has leaned heavily on dried supplies, hard bread, preserved things, and whatever could survive heat, transport, and the indignity of being packed beside camel equipment. Suddenly, there is fresh meat, soft bread, sweet wine, and little dishes that required actual planning. You want to eat with both urgency and dignity. These goals are natural enemies. Servants circulate constantly. They refill cups before they empty, remove bones before they accumulate, replace cloths, carry basins, clear platters, and do it all with that unnerving palace smoothness that makes human labor look like magic. But you know better. You have run a kingdom. You know what it takes to make this scene happen. Storage rooms, schedules, procurement, cooks sweating over fires, bakers up before dawn, account keepers muttering over rations. Somebody, somewhere, definitely getting blamed for a missing spoon. That, oddly enough, is reassuring. Because true order is not just shine. True order reaches the kitchens. A trumpet sounds in the distance. Not a battle trumpet, a ceremonial one. The sort that tells everyone with ears that significance is approaching, and they had better arrange their face accordingly. Conversations lower. Backs straighten. A ripple passes through the hall as neat and quick as wind over grain. The choreography tightens. Solomon enters without hurrying. That is the first thing you notice. He does not rush in like a man eager to prove he deserves the rumors. He comes in with the unbothered pace of someone thoroughly at home in this machinery. Robes layered well, ornament measured but unmistakable, attendants near but not clinging. He is not trying to outshine the room. The room is already doing that on his behalf. The second thing you notice is everyone else watching him, not merely respecting him, watching him. Officials track his expression. Servants time their movements around him. Guards sharpen without looking like they sharpened. This is not the reaction of people tolerating a decorative king while the kingdom runs itself behind his back. This is a court calibrated to one central figure. Whether that figure is wise or just terrifyingly competent at being obeyed remains to be seen. Introductions happen with proper grandeur. Titles roll out like carpets. Blessings stack up. Diplomatic phrases multiply. Gifts are acknowledged in terms so polished you could see your face in them. The Queen and the King exchange the kind of formal courtesies that sound serene while carrying enough strategic weight to crack a table. Each word lands carefully. No one has come this far to be casual. Solomon welcomes her warmly, not slobbering, not theatrical, not with that brittle over-friendliness people use when desperate to impress. Warmly, confidently. He looks at her like he understands exactly what kind of woman would travel months to test a reputation and possibly respects the audacity. That does not settle the matter, but it does make the room lean in another inch. You are taken through more of the complex. This king does not merely own a palace. He owns an ecosystem of splendor. Reception halls, private courts, administrative spaces, guard areas, storerooms, staircases rising from one level to another in clean lines of stone and wood. Everywhere, movement. Everywhere, evidence that wealth has been trained into routine. Those stairways matter more than you expect. You watch officials ascend and descend them in ordered procession, messengers slipping through side passages, servants carrying trays without spilling a drop. Steps worn just enough to show use, not neglect. Railings polished by hands, architecture with rhythm. It tells you this place is not built only for looking at. It functions, which is much harder. One stairway in particular draws the eye. Broad, deliberate, leading upward, with the kind of ceremonial confidence that says, important feet have used this route often. You can feel why visitors had talked about it afterward. It is not only expensive, it is dramatic. It makes motion itself look royal. You climb it and briefly understand the appeal of making an entrance every time you go to lunch. At some point, you are brought where the temple presence can be felt. The atmosphere shifts before the view fully opens. Palace luxury has one kind of weight. This has another. Fewer playful details. More gravity. The smell changes too. Cedar still, yes, but also oil, smoke, offering, and that dry mineral scent of dressed stone warming in daylight. Priests move with practiced attention. Levites attend their duties. Music and sacrifice hover in the air like twin reminders that this kingdom is trying to bind beauty to worship and order to holiness. It is quieter here, not silent, never silent. Animals make that impossible, and so do people. But the noise changes shape. Voices lower, footsteps behave. Even the bustling seems more careful. You stand in the edge of it and feel the difference between a king displaying his riches and a people trying to center their life around the presence of God. That gets the queen's attention, not because Sheba lacks religion, far from it. You have smelled enough incense back home to fumigate a continent. But this is another arrangement of power. The palace and the holy place stand near each other, and the whole city seems to pulse around that nearness. It is impressive, yes. It is also risky. Any ruler can drape himself in sacred atmosphere. The question is whether the devotion has substance or only architecture. So you keep watching. priests with clean garments and serious faces, offerings handled with care, musicians who are not fumbling like sleepy cousins at a wedding, courtyards maintained, vessels arranged, order without visible panic. It feels rehearsed, but in the good sense, not fake, prepared. Like people have decided that if they are going to approach the holy, they might at least wash first and stop dropping things. Back in the court, the spectacle resumes. Officials dine in rank. Cupbearers move at exactly the right time. Advisors stand ready. Petitioners are managed. Musicians thread sound through the hall without making themselves the event. The household staff changes courses and clears spaces with a synchronization that would make a military commander weep. You start to understand why travelers came back babbling. They had seen wealth before. They had not seen it so thoroughly organized. That is when the first little crack in your skepticism appears. Not a collapse, just a crack. Because expensive nonsense is usually sloppy somewhere. The polishing is uneven. The servants are terrified. The food arrives late. The rooms shine while the corridors stink. Somebody overdecorates to distract from incompetence. But here, the excellence runs all the way down. Public rooms, private movement, ranked seating, ritual spaces, food service, timberwork, metalwork, protocol. It all holds together. Still, gold can cover a lot. You do not surrender judgment yet. The Queen certainly does not. Her face remains beautifully unreadable, but by now you know the signs. She has gone from irritated curiosity to active assessment. This place has passed the first tests without even hearing the questions. That is impressive. Also annoying. It is one thing to expose a fraud. It is another to discover the rumors undersold him. The afternoon stretches through receptions and observation. Envoys come and go. Cases are mentioned. Messages delivered. Administrators confer. Nothing dramatic happens, and that may be the most convincing thing so far. A fraudulent court can stage one astonishing banquet. It is harder to fake ordinary competence for hours on end. Yet the place continues to run. Not perfectly. No human system does. Somewhere a servant nearly drops a jug and saves it with the face of a man seeing his ancestors. Somewhere two officials exchange a glance sharp enough to slice figs. But the machine keeps turning. By evening, the light deepens and the gold softens. Lamps take over where the sun leaves off. Cedar darkens into richer tones. The hall grows warmer with bodies, food, oil, and the day settling into itself. Outside, the city still murmurs over the hills. Inside, the palace holds its shape. Elegant, busy, alert, almost indecently well managed. You stand there feeling travel dust in your seams and spice still clinging to your clothes from the south. Across from you is a kingdom that may actually deserve its own rumors. That is a deeply inconvenient development, because it would have been much easier if Jerusalem had turned out to be all display. A mountain of polish around a hollow center. A royal peacock house full of carved wood and bad judgment. You could have nodded politely, exchanged gifts, gone home, and reported that the man had excellent decorators and nothing more. Instead, the place keeps showing signs of something sturdier. Order, attention, restraint where excess would have been easier. And yes, excess too. Let us not pretend otherwise. This palace absolutely loves a dramatic finish. It uses gold the way some people use punctuation, far too often and with great confidence. It is a place that wants your eyes wide and your memory crowded. But underneath the performance, there is structure. You can feel it, like heavy beams under painted ceilings. The queen is given lodging fit for her station. Of course she is. Rooms prepared, water ready, textiles fresh, lamps trimmed, guards assigned, servants briefed. Somewhere nearby, her own attendants are unpacking valuables with the concentrated misery of people who have packed and repacked these same objects for months and would now like a medal, a bath, and unconsciousness. The camels, one hopes, are finally chewing in offended peace. Night settles over the hill city. The noise drops but never disappears. Jerusalem does not so much sleep as mutter. A dog barks. A door thuds. Footsteps cross stone. From somewhere lower on the slope comes the last clatter of cleanup and the smell of banked coals. Above it all, the palace glows in pockets of lamplight, cedar and gold holding the day's heat. Tomorrow comes the real test. All this splendor, all this order, all this polished choreography has done its work. It has made one thing clear. Solomon's kingdom is not merely very expensive. That question has become harder now, narrower and sharper. The gold has spoken. The timber has spoken. The stairways, servants, officials, feasts and temple smoke have all taken their turn. But now the man himself will have to speak. And in rooms still fragrant with cedar, oil, roasted meat, and the ghost of long-travelled spices, Jerusalem waits, bright on its hill, almost unbearably composed, while the questions gather their weight, and the court prepares to hear whether its famous king can carry more than ornament. The air inside the audience hall smells different from the courtyards. Outside, Jerusalem smelled like dust, animal breath, hot stone, and traffic. In here, it is cedar oil, expensive incense, polished wood, lamp smoke, and food carried past on trays by sweating servants pretending not to sweat. The floor shines. The gold flashes. Everybody is arranged with such careful dignity that you almost want to trip over something on principle. But gold and architecture are the easy part. Now comes the real reason you travelled all this way, to find out whether the man can actually answer you. You do not hurry. That would ruin the effect. Your attendants settle behind you in a rustle of linen, jewelry, and controlled exhaustion. Months of desert have taught everybody how to stand still while their knees complain bitterly. Chests of spices wait nearby. Gold is stacked in the kind of quantity that makes ordinary people blink. Precious stones glow from open cases like captured pieces of sunset. The whole room knows you did not arrive empty-handed. The whole room also knows gifts are not surrender. Across from you sits Solomon. He is not lounging. That would be foolish. He is seated like a man aware that half the world has developed an opinion about him and the other half is on its way. His officials line the chamber in ordered ranks. Scribes crouch with tablets. Advisors look as alert as men can look before noon in heavy robes. Guards stand with spears and expressions suggesting they have practiced not scratching their noses for years. Nobody coughs. That is how tense it is. You study him the way a merchant studies a sealed jar. Nice lid, lovely glaze. But what is actually inside? Olive oil? Honey? Or disappointment with a decorative handle? You crossed deserts, paid guards, rationed water, endured camel moods, and slept in tents full of dust and snoring for this exact moment. So, you begin. Not with something easy, not with a polite little exchange about roads and weather and how interesting everyone's customs are. No. You came carrying questions sharpened over weeks of travel, turned over under stars, polished in your mind while your caravan creaked south to north and north to south, through every miserable pass and checkpoint in creation. The first riddle drops into the room like a pebble into still water. It sounds elegant. It is not kind. A murmur travels through the edges of the court and then dies immediately, because nobody here wants to be the first person seen murmuring in front of two monarchs. Solomon listens. He does not interrupt. He lets the questions settle. You watch his face for strain, for bluff, for the tiny twitch of a man reaching into empty shelves and praying for a clever line. Instead, he answers, not fast in the desperate way, fast in the calm way. It is annoying. His answer comes clean and fitted, like a key sliding into a lock built for it. The room shifts almost imperceptibly. One scribe glances up before remembering his job and scratching furiously again. An official near the throne relaxes one shoulder. You keep your expression level because a queen does not cross half the known world to widen her eyes at the first decent reply. So you ask another. This one has layers. On the surface, it is wordplay, the sort of thing meant to trip a proud man into showing off too soon. Under that, it is a test of judgment. Under that, it is politics wearing a funny hat. If he misses one layer, you will see it. If he grabs the shiny answer and ignores the dangerous one underneath, you will see that too. This is not party entertainment. This is due diligence with jewelry on. Solomon smiles slightly, which is rude, honestly. Then he answers that one too. He untangles the wordplay, catches the hidden barb, and turns the whole thing over in his hands as if it weighs almost nothing. Not nothing. Just not enough to trouble him. You hear a tiny intake of breath somewhere behind you among your own attendants, quickly smothered. Somebody on his side of the room looks deeply relieved to remain employed. You adjust one ring on your finger, only because it needs adjusting. The questions keep coming. You ask about kings and justice, about how a ruler decides between two people who both weep and both lie. You ask about wealth, because wealth is a wonderful servant and a disgusting master. You ask about trade, about how peace is kept when every road brings profit and every profit attracts teeth. You ask about worship, because a kingdom can stack gold to the ceiling and still rot from the center if it bows to nonsense. He answers those too, not with the oily confidence of a man who learned to sound wise in front of mirrors. You know that type. Everybody knows that type. They are unbearable at banquets and dangerous in council. Solomon answers like somebody who has spent long hours sitting in the mess of human disputes, listening to tears, greed, excuses, fear, and the astonishing creativity of people trying not to be accountable. It gives his words weight. That is the part you cannot fake. A shallow answer gleams for a moment and then collapses like wet bread. His do not collapse. They settle heavier the longer they sit there. The officials around him are not surprised by this, which tells you something almost as useful as the answer itself. They have seen this before. This is not a lucky morning. This is the house standard. You bring a harder one. The court feels it immediately. It is not just a riddle now. It is the kind of question that makes old men stroke their beards, and younger men suddenly find the flaw fascinating. A question about duty crossing affection, about mercy crossing law, about what must be preserved when every available choice costs something precious. The sort of question that follows rulers into bed and wakes up with them before dawn. Silence stretches. A servant carrying a tray freezes so completely you would think he had turned into furniture. Lamps flicker. A ribbon of incense crawls upward and bends in the warm air. Somewhere beyond the chamber, far off, a donkey expresses itself with the confidence of a creature entirely unbothered by geopolitics. Solomon does not fill the pause with noise. That matters. Men who are frightened of silence usually cover themselves with words the way bad builders cover cracks with plaster. It looks smooth until the wall falls on your head. He sits with the question. He weighs it. You can almost feel the room leaning toward him, not because they worship him, but because they expect him to land this. Then he does. Not cheaply, not with a neat little line that would fit on a plaque. He answers in a way that leaves the edges sharp. He gives judgment without pretending hard things are suddenly soft. He speaks of responsibility as though it is heavier than gold and harder to carry. He speaks of reverence as though a king is still under authority, still accountable, still not the largest thing in his own kingdom. You feel, to your irritation, the tiny inward jolt that comes when a person says exactly the thing that should be said. And now the room changes. You notice it first in yourself, which is inconvenient. The resistance you carried all these miles is still there, but it has to work harder now. It can no longer dismiss him as a man with expensive walls and excellent publicists. You have seen enough rulers to know performance when it preens in front of you. This is not preening. This is competence with fear of God in it. You ask more. Of course you do. A queen with self-respect does not stop after 3 impressive replies. You test him from different directions. Quick questions, slow questions, questions that sound simple and are not, questions with practical teeth, questions about administration, disputes, worship, neighboring powers, famine, abundance, order, and what happens when a nation forgets gratitude and starts confusing prosperity with immortality. He keeps answering. The scribes can barely keep up. One of them has a cramp in his hand and tries to hide it by flexing under the tablet, but you see him. Another has ink on his wrist. A courtier near the back is sweating through his collar, though whether from heat or second-hand anxiety is hard to say. Your own attendants have stopped trying to look politely detached. They are listening now with the full stillness of people realizing the rumors did not oversell. That almost never happens. Usually, rumors arrive bloated, perfumed, and wearing jewelry they did not earn. By the time you meet the actual person, half the glory has fallen off like cheap beads on a broken cord. But this man is somehow worse in person in the most inconvenient way. The palace is as rich as advertised. The service is more polished than advertised. And the mind at the center of it all is not decorative. You hate how impressive this is. Only briefly. Then admiration moves in and starts rearranging the furniture. Your attention shifts from trying to catch him failing to trying to understand how he holds all this together. Not just answers in a hall, a kingdom, officials, priests, builders, storehouses, trade, ceremonies, disputes, food enough for this machine of a court to keep grinding every day. You have walked through the gears of it. You have seen the stairways, the seating, the servants moving in layers like the inside of an anthill with better clothing. And now the center speaks. No wonder people talked. You glance around the hall and see it differently. The cupbearers, precise and silent. The officials in their places. The attendants in fine linen. The disciplined flow of service at the table. The ordered seating. The offerings, the rituals, the administration behind the spectacle. It is not just wealth thrown around like confetti, by a man with excellent taste in timber. It is order. It is intention. It is a mind making a kingdom run. That hits you harder than the gold. Gold just sits there being shiny. Wisdom has to move through people. It has to survive bad tempers, failed harvests, border disputes, petty officials, greedy merchants, family drama, and the general fact that human beings are exhausting. Anybody can build a staircase if they have enough labor and enough trees. Building a court where people know their place, justice is sought, and reverence is not merely theatre. That is a rarer thing. For a moment, you forget to maintain your face. It happens fast, just a breath. But you feel it. You understand now why people said there was no more spirit in you. Not because you faint dramatically onto the polished floor. Nobody is dropping royal dignity in public. But something inside you gives way all at once. The defended part. The part that came armored in skepticism. It is like stepping up one more stair in dim light and discovering there is no stair there. Your breath catches. Your chest goes light. The room seems too bright and very far away. So, this was real. The wisdom, the order, the reverence, the abundance wrapped around discipline instead of chaos. You had prepared yourself for exaggeration and found understatement instead, which is frankly rude after a journey that long. When you speak again, it is no longer as a hunter laying traps. It is as one sovereign speaking plainly to another. You tell him what traveled the roads to Sheba, the reports of his words, his wisdom, his household, his ascent, his service, the whole astonishing operation. You admit, because there is no point playing games now, that you did not believe the reports at first. Sensible of you. The world is full of nonsense in sandals. But now your own eyes have seen it, and even the stories that annoyed you for months did not manage to cover the half of it. The court absorbs this like thirsty ground-taking rain. You can feel the pleasure move around the room, not vulgar gloating. More the deep, satisfied glow of employees hearing an important visitor confirm that their terrifying boss is, in fact, terrifying for good reason. Several officials attempt to look humbly unaffected and fail. One attendant's whole posture lifts by an inch. Somewhere in the back, a musician who has absolutely no role in this exchange is probably feeling smug on principle. You go further. You speak of his God. Not lightly, not as flattery tossed like flower petals. You have watched this kingdom long enough to see that its confidence is attached to worship, to covenant, to a claim larger than wealth. You have seen the house built for that God. You have watched the order around it. You have heard the king answer as a man who knows he is not ultimate. So you bless the God who delighted to set such a king on the throne, to do justice and righteousness among this people. That lands in the room with the weight of incense. Solomon receives it without the twitchy vanity of a man being fed compliments like figs. He knows what belongs to him and what does not. That, more than the gold, more than the cedar, more than the endless dishes and impossible table service, is what convinces you the deepest. He can bear praise without clawing at it. He can hear honor given upward and not snatch it back down to himself like a child grabbing sweets. Then comes the giving. At last, the treasures you hauled across burning miles begin to move. Servants step forward with spices first, and the fragrance rises so rich it almost feels visible. Frankincense, myrrh, aromatics packed and sealed and guarded over mountain passes, through grit, heat, flies, sore feet, and the constant possibility of thieves with entrepreneurial spirit. The scent blooms into the cedar air of the court and changes the whole room. It is Sheba entering Jerusalem through the nose. Then the gold. Heavy, warm, undeniable gold. Not bracelets and trinkets. Not a cute diplomatic token wrapped in embroidered cloth. Piles. Weight. The sort of gift that makes treasurers stand straighter and start calculating storage before their faces have finished being respectful. Precious stones follow, catching the lamplight in hard flashes of red, green, and blue. Your caravan did not cross all that wilderness to arrive looking underprepared. Solomon answers gift with gift. Of course he does. There is exchange now, not just of objects, but of recognition. Royal courtesy at the highest level, with all the ceremony and all the meaning. He gives from his bounty, from his household, from the abundance of a king who is not afraid of generosity, because his storehouses are full and his honor is secure. Servants move back and forth carrying wealth enough to make lesser men delirious. The hall smells like cedar, spice, oil, and money. Ancient money too, which has its own scent, metal, cloth, leather, and the faint dusty tang of things stored in chests by serious people with keys. You hear clasps open, lids shut, sandals whisper over polished floors, the soft grunt of men lifting what diplomacy insists on calling a gesture. Somebody somewhere is definitely going to throw out his back in the service of international friendship. The formal exchange winds down, but the atmosphere does not loosen right away. Everyone is still living inside the strangeness of what just happened. A queen came from the southern trade routes carrying questions sharp enough to skin a man alive in public. A king answered them. Not barely, not adequately, fully. The wealth matched the splendor matched the order, and, most unbelievable of all, the order matched the wisdom. That combination is rare enough to feel almost suspicious. Yet, here it is. You stand in the middle of it, breathing air thick with imported fragrance and lamp smoke, and realize the journey has changed shape. It began as a mission to verify whether fame had gotten drunk and started exaggerating again. It has ended in recognition. You did not find a fraud with a good decorator. You found a ruler whose greatness had spine. Around you, the court breathes again. Small sounds return. A robe shifts, a sandal scuffs. Someone finally dares to swallow. The servants resume their movements. Musicians at the edge of the hall wait for a signal. Scribes straighten stiff backs and flex cramped fingers, silently composing complaints they will later share over supper with great moral seriousness. Outside, the city keeps doing city things. Water sloshes. Animals complain. Bread bakes. Jerusalem remains gloriously unable to revolve around one room for very long. But in this room, something has settled. The test is over. Not because you ran out of questions. You probably did not. A good ruler never does. But because you have reached the point every honest seeker reaches eventually, if the answer before them is solid enough. The point where more testing becomes theatre. The point where doubt has done its useful work and now needs to stop strutting around like it pays rent. You incline your head. Not deeply. You are still a queen. But enough. Enough to mark what has happened. Enough to say, without saying it like a servant, that the man before you has met the burden placed on him. Enough to honor wisdom where you have found it. Enough for the chamber to understand that this long, dusty, expensive, frankly absurd journey has achieved its purpose. And beyond the carved beams and gold and incense, beyond the lines of officials and the guarded doors, beyond the whole polished machine of Solomon's court, your caravan waits in the city with its tired camels, patched gear, spice-scented baggage, and drivers who have seen enough road to hate every pebble by name. Soon you will leave. Soon the road south will call again with all its dust, flies, cold nights, hot mornings, border nonsense, and camel breath. Soon Jerusalem will shrink behind you, and the desert will reopen like a giant sunburned mouth. But for this one moment, you stand still in a hall where grandeur and wisdom have, against all probability, actually met, and there is almost nothing to add. The gold glows, the incense lifts, the questions are answered, and for once the rumors were too small. The incense is probably still in your clothes. Even after the questions are finished, even after the gold has changed hands and the court has finally unclenched, that part lingers. Spice in the fabric, dust in the hems, the memory of camels complaining like underpaid contractors. A queen from the far south standing in a northern palace, blinking at the deeply annoying fact that the rumors were true. So, after all of that, what were the storytellers trying to tell us? Start with Sheba itself, because that matters. She did not come from nowhere. She came from abundance, from storerooms sweating perfume into the air, from caravans stacked with frankincense, myrrh, gold, and the logistical nightmare of moving luxury through a world made mostly of rocks, heat, and bad roads. She already knew wealth. She already knew power. She was not some wide-eyed traveler who saw polished cedar and forgot her own name. That is part of the point. She arrives as someone impressive in her own right. She understands administration, trade, diplomacy, and the exhausting business of keeping a rich kingdom from turning into a shouting match with invoices. She knows what splendor looks like. She has servants, officials, and enough treasure to make pack animals collapse in protest. So when she finally stands in Solomon's world and is moved by what she sees, it means something. It means wisdom is not only for the desperate. That is such a steady, useful thing in this story. She is not crawling toward Jerusalem because her life is empty. She is not coming because she has no options left. She comes because she has heard that somewhere beyond her own horizon there may be real wisdom worth crossing deserts to find. That matters. The storytellers wanted that remembered. A full life can still go searching. A powerful person can still admit there is something she does not yet know. And then there is the journey, which was frankly outrageous. Months of heat, sand in places sand has no right to be, water skins growing warm and leathery in the sun, camps that smell like smoke, wool, camel breath and old onions, guards snoring, servants arguing, somebody always needing to retie a load because the gift chest is sliding sideways again. This is not a charming little royal day trip with scenic views and a packed lunch. This is commitment with blisters. That part teaches its own lesson. Some things are worth effort before they give you anything back. Wisdom is one of those things. Truth is one of those things. She does not sit in Sheba waiting for certainty to be delivered with a tidy seal and a polite note. She gets up. She organizes the caravan. She pays the cost in time, comfort, energy, and probably several layers of patience she did not know she possessed. The story gives dignity to that hunger. Not frantic hunger, not gullible hunger. She does not rush north because she is easily impressed. Quite the opposite. She goes because she is careful. She has heard the reports, and she does not hand over her admiration cheaply. That is another reason people kept this story close. It honors testing. It honors discernment. It honors the person who says, I am willing to travel far for the truth, but I am also going to ask hard questions when I get there. And she does. That scene with Solomon lands because she is not there to applaud on cue like a courtier with excellent posture and no inner life. She comes with riddles, difficult matters, sharp curiosity, and the calm expression of someone who did not survive months of caravan misery just to be dazzled by decorative staircases. She wants to know whether there is substance under the shine, whether the man is wise or merely very well advertised. That, too, is part of the meaning. The storytellers are not asking you to admire reputation by itself. Rumors fill roads all the time. Half the ancient world runs on gossip, exaggeration, and a merchant saying, "No, really, you had to be there." The point is not that Solomon was famous. Plenty of people are famous for ridiculous reasons. The point is that his wisdom endured examination. It held up under weight. It could answer a mind that came prepared. That is what satisfied her. Not just the gold, not just the menu, not just the architecture trying so hard it practically flexed. It was the fit between wisdom and order. The household worked. The officials were arranged well. The service flowed. The answers came. The whole kingdom had that rare feeling of a place where insight had actually shaped life. Not perfectly, because no kingdom manages that trick for long, but truly enough to take her breath for a moment. And then comes her response, which is one of the loveliest parts. She does not sulk because someone else has something she must honor. She does not turn petty. She does not do that deeply human thing where admiration curdles into jealousy before it reaches the mouth. She blesses what she sees. She names it plainly. The reports were true, and even they had not captured the whole thing. There is humility in that, and not the fake kind. Real humility sounds like that. It sounds like a strong person saying, I have seen something excellent, and I am not diminished by admitting it. In fact, I am enlarged by it. The Queen stays regal, intelligent, and fully herself. She does not become smaller by recognizing greatness. She becomes wiser. That is one of the great comforts tucked inside this story. Honoring another person's gift does not rob you of your own. And over all of it sits the larger meaning she herself reaches for. The wisdom in Jerusalem is not treated like a clever party trick, not like Solomon is merely the ancient world's most exhausting overachiever. She recognizes it as gift. That is where the story finally settles. Wisdom, beauty, order, justice, understanding. These are not decorations humans manufacture out of ego alone. At their best, they are signs of God's generosity breaking into public life. She sees the source above the throne. That is where the storytellers wanted your eyes to rest. Not on royal glamour by itself. Glamour ages badly. It flakes, tarnishes, gets looted, and ends up in somebody else's treasury. Not even on Solomon by himself, because even the wisest king is still a man in a robe eating lunch and needing sleep. The deeper point is that God's gifts can appear beyond your borders, outside your expectations, in places you might not have bothered to look unless curiosity and humility dragged you there. That is why this queen matters so much. She becomes the picture of a person who goes the distance for wisdom, tests what she hears, recognizes the real thing, and praises God when she finds it. She is wealthy, but not too wealthy to seek. Powerful, but not too powerful to learn. Disciplined enough to travel. Sharp enough to question. Honest enough to be convinced. It is a beautiful combination, and it gives the whole journey its closure. From the perfumed storerooms of Sheba to the sore-backed miles of caravan life, from rumor to arrival, from suspicion to astonishment, the road was not wasted. The deserts were not wasted. The questions were not wasted. She came looking for whether wisdom was real, and she left knowing that it was. More than that, she left knowing that true wisdom leads your gaze upward. It produces gratitude, not just applause. So when the dust settles on this story, that is what remains. You come away feeling how rare that is. To go far for what is worth finding. To test what glitters instead of bowing to it. To ask better questions. And then, when something truly wise and good stands in front of you, to admit it without letting pride get in the way. The Queen did, and her journey endured long after the incense burned away and the camel tracks disappeared. The road home waits with the same dust, the same stars, and the same camel opinions. Only now the questions are gone. What remains is the slow creak of loaded straps, spice still clinging to cloth, and a queen riding south with proof in her memory. Jerusalem fades behind you. Sheba waits ahead. And somewhere between cedar halls and desert wind, the journey keeps breathing on, long after the hoofprints vanish and the incense thins into the night.